everyone. Good afternoon and welcome once again to the weekly media briefing and public health update with Montgomery County Executive Marc Elrich. I'm Lorna Virgilio, Hispanic Public Information Officer, and joining us today is Dr. Keisha Davis, who is the county's health officer, as well as Dr. James Bridgers, Director of the Department of Health and Human Services, Mr. Sean O'Donnell, Deputy Chief of Public Health Services, and we have a very special guest today who happens to be the Lieutenant Governor of the state of Maryland, Aruna Miller. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Mr. County Executive, floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and thank you, everybody, for joining us. And I want to thank the Lieutenant Governor for coming here and joining us as well. I knew you when you were back in MCDOT. Today, I'm back in Annapolis for Maryland State of the State, and this is Governor Westmore's third address. And it's clear that he's the right person at the right time to face the challenges that are upon us and to lead this state through this, what is going to be a very challenging time. His administration's facing an unprecedented state deficit and the uncertainty of federal funding support. Despite these obstacles, the governor remains optimistic and has charted a path forward that, in his words, is responding to the moment. The governor's plan focuses on boosting the economy, strengthening our workforce, modernizing government, and creating a fair tax system. I'm glad he's back to tax reform. That's some of the things that are being proposed, and that the reforms do not raise revenue through sales or property taxes on residents. There's a poll out a couple of days ago, and it was in the Washington Post, and it kind of gauged support for the governor and a number of his views. And he had a lot of support, as you can see from the poll results, on raising taxes, on sports betting and on cannabis, and on incomes over $500,000. He got less support on retail food delivery and cutting the University of Maryland system and developmental disabilities. These are all things that are a product of having a $3 billion hole that you're trying to fill. But I'm glad that he's looking at how we can raise income here, because it's really important if we're going to go forward. I think the only thing worse would be if we don't do this, then the consequences of the reductions of services across the board in the state, I think, would be really drastic and be really difficult for many of our residents. So this is necessary approach to how we're going to have to deal with things. A new poll by the Washington Post and the University of Maryland shows how well received some of these proposals are, with high marks for tax increases on high-income earners in sports betting, recreational cannabis. And that poll also showed very high support in the state among both Democratic and independent voters, which was good to see. Montgomery County will benefit from a record investment in education. At a time when federal investments are in question, some of the state spending would help create clean energy and a critical focus when we desperately need to address climate change. At the heart of this budget is growing the middle class, creating jobs, and spurring economic development activity. Here in Montgomery County, we're trying to do our part. Our county accounts for 1/6 of the state's population, but 25% of the state's GDP. Montgomery County will continue to focus on growing our life sciences, technology, and hospital industries, while we also look for opportunities to create manufacturing jobs here, something we really haven't done in the past, and to invest in workforce training and our education system. We look forward to a continued partnership and collaborations with the state on the economic development efforts. And this week, I'm excited to welcome Lieutenant Governor and Montgomery County's very own Aruna Miller to discuss the administration's plans. So, Aruna, thank you for being here. It's all yours.
Good afternoon, County Executive Elrich. It is wonderful to be joining you and your listeners. And to Team Montgomery County, thank you for everything that you do for the people of Montgomery County. So thank you for, again, allowing me to address your listeners of your podcast and the residents of my home county for the past 35 years, which of course is Montgomery County. Look, this is where my husband and I raised our 3 daughters who all went to Montgomery County public schools. This is where I spent 25 years working for Montgomery County Department of Transportation as an engineer. And this is where I served as a Maryland State delegate for the people of Germantown, Potomac, and Clarksburg. And now it's an honor to represent Montgomery County and the state of Maryland as the Lieutenant Governor. As you said earlier, Mr. County Executive, Governor Moore today gave his State of the State address. So it was great to see you in Annapolis. Thank you for always being so supportive and a great partner to Governor Moore and myself and our entire administration. Now, the governor and I have had the honor to serve the people of this great state since 2023. Today, as was said, the governor delivered his third State of the State address. And there's no doubt these are challenging times. Look, we have a new administration in the White House that, quite frankly, is undermining the values that we as Marylanders so dearly believe in. And the series of executive orders issued by the new administration have caused a lot of chaos, concerns, and the actions, that this administration's executive orders will hurt Marylanders in a deep way. But know that Governor Moore, myself, County Executive, are going to continue to work with our partners in our federal delegation and do everything we possibly can to protect our federal workforce, our immigrant communities, and Marylanders across the state. So coupled with this uncertainty is Maryland's budget deficit. Having said this, Governor Moore and I want your listeners and Marylanders to know that we're going to get through this. We will solve the problems collectively and deliver the results that the people of Maryland so deserve. I want to start off with some good news. Maryland's economy is strong, and we're going to double down on making it even stronger by investing in the industries driving our economy. So we're talking about, as you heard from the county executive earlier, life sciences. We're also going to, double down on IT, cybersecurity, aerospace, defense, and quantum computing. These are the fields that are shaping the future. And one of the things that all of these fields have in common is that they're all STEM-oriented industries. And I got to tell you, being a STEM major myself, I love to see young people really invest in STEM, whether it's K through 12 or in college. I encourage everyone, young people coming out, to really invest in STEM. You can get great jobs with a college degree or with an associate's degree or coming right out of college in the STEM fields. Now, our administration, since we took office, another good news is that when we first took office, Maryland was 43rd in the nation for unemployment. Today, Maryland has one of the lowest unemployment rates in the country, which means people are working and businesses are hiring. Another good thing, Maryland has the highest median household income in the nation. That tells you Marylanders are earning well, but we also know there's many Marylanders that aren't, and we're going to do what we can to make sure that they also have a fair shot in our economy. And since we took office, we've seen a historic decrease in gun violence, the likes of which we haven't seen in decades. So I know that Maryland's $3 billion budget deficit for 2026 sounds very alarming. And I understand the anxiety Marylanders are facing. But here's the thing. Our administration understands that we can't just cut our way or tax our way to prosperity, right? We're going to have to really think about expanding our economy, making sure our tax base gets broader, growing our economy. So our FY 2026 budget proposes $2 billion in smart, targeted spending reductions because we want to make sure government is efficient. And we want to make sure taxpayers' dollars are being spent in the most efficient way. And we're going to make $1 billion in new and redirected revenues. We're going to make sure we invest in all of this. So what does this mean? We're going to diversify our economy and invest in the industries of the future that I already mentioned earlier, right? We're going to modernize our tax code to make it fairer and make it about pro-growth. Here's what that means. We're going to simplify income taxes by eliminating itemized deductions, but doubling the standard deduction so more people can benefit. We're also going to make our tax system fairer by compressing the lower tax brackets, but asking the wealthiest to pay a little more. So what does this mean? It means that 2/3 of Marylanders will see a tax cut and 82% will see their taxes either go down or stay the same. And we're going to also make sure that we adjust the casino table tax, gaming tax, and cannabis tax that the county executive mentioned earlier, that the polls showed that Marylanders very much support. These are some of the ways in which we will raise revenue. And as always, we will invest in our people. Look, Governor Moore and I believe the only source that's really rooted in our state and in our nation, and the ultimate source of all its wealth, is our people. So we're going to make sure that we invest in our people by strengthening our labor force. We're introducing the RAISE Act legislation, which proposes to offer non-college career pathways through apprenticeships and creates Maryland Office of Apprenticeship Development for the first time in Maryland. And our administration has already invested in $400 million for child care subsidy. When we first started, there was only $60 million invested in this. But Governor Moore and I believe that families in Maryland don't have to choose between taking care of their children and getting back into the jobs, into our economy. And we also invested in the Enough Act, which is going to target childhood poverty. And we have the nation's first ever service year option because Governor Moore and I believe strongly in service. We believe service is sticky, and service is what's going to save us. When people feel vested, young people particularly, in their communities, we're going to be that much better. And of course, we've raised the minimum wage, but there's still a lot that we need to do. So what I want to say before I conclude is that all of us recognize we are facing challenging times, both with the Maryland state budget deficit and the chaotic changes being proposed by the administration at the national level. Our administration we're going to work with our partners at the federal, state, and local levels, and we're going to work with our private industry partners, and most importantly, all the communities in the state of Maryland. Together, we will navigate through these challenging times. So thank you for having me here, and I look forward to hearing any questions.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. Members of the media, this is the time for questions regarding the state of the state address, other topics related to the state. For the Lieutenant Governor, please raise your hands. And I see Donna Munro, the Washington Post. Good afternoon. You're first.
Hi, Lieutenant Governor. I had a question about the budget cut or deficit proposal. I wondered, I'd seen a lot about the disability cuts, but not, maybe I've missed it, but I haven't seen much explanation of why that's one that you guys chose to reduce to plug the deficit. I wondered if you could illuminate me a little bit on that decision.
Sure. So first thing, what I want to say is, look, the budget is just the beginning, right? We're here during the 90-day session, legislative session, where the community will get to weigh in, and the legislature, we will work in partnership with them, and ultimately a budget will be passed. Now, the reason why there was cuts that were being proposed for our, DDA is, number one, let me just say from day one, Governor Moore and I have been committed to building an administration that uplifts every Marylander, including those with disabilities. And during the first 2 years of our administration, we have increased the budget of the Developmental Disabilities Administration by $630 million. And some of what we're proposing to do is cost containment and, cuts that, look, quite frankly, we know this is a community that's very vulnerable, and we're going to continue to fight for them. But again, when we take a look at the $3 billion budget deficit, we're looking across all our agencies on where we can make cuts that are fair. And every community is going to feel, well, that's not fair that you're hitting us and not another one. Look, we're looking across the scale to see every one of the departments. And again, we will work with the DDA community. We are hearing from them right now, trust me. And this is something very near and dear and personal to me. I have a family member that is severely intellectually and developmentally disabled, so I know the challenges that these families face, and I assure you that we hear them, we see them, and we're going to work with them, during this 90-day legislative session and get to the point that they feel satisfied and that we're still able to adjust to this deficit that we're facing.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Yes, go ahead. Go ahead.
Can you clarify a little bit for us, like where the superfluous spending is in the DDA that like was not being used well, or just like where in their budget you're looking?
Well, I actually did an op-ed piece on this, and I went into details a little bit about where that is. Look, it's from, the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services. We've made a lot of measurable progress there, but there are areas in which we have, because through legislation that came before Governor Moore and I came into the administration, including being able to do things that are self-serve. I don't know if you're familiar with that particular legislation that came through, where many of the families that have been going outside into the community to get services are now doing self-service, right? And as a result of that, it's been great for the families. There's no doubt about it. But there's also been, situations where some, percentage of people have abused this, and we want to make sure that we get to that, right? And again, over the past 2 years, we've increased it tremendously. We are going to make sure that we still meet the needs of the disabled community. We know how vulnerable they are, and we're going to get to this because we're hearing from them and they're talking about it in ways we can improve it. And with our partners in the legislature, we will do this.
Sorry, one more quick follow-up, if that's
Sure.
okay. Are you fairly confident then that this cut will not impact people that are getting services? It will not reduce their services? It's like kind of cutting areas that aren't being utilized already?
Well, here's the thing. I can't say, for 100% nothing is going to be impacted. Of course it is. Look, when you're facing a budget deficit, there's a lot of moving parts here, and not everyone's going to be happy with the end result. But we're all going to listen to what they have to say, and we're going to do what we need to do so they can get the best services they need in the end. Might not be exactly what everyone, the particular community is looking for, but look, Governor Moore and I will listen, and we're going to adjust our sails. That's what life is all about, especially when we're navigating challenging times. Look, some of the things that have increased has been higher wages that have been paid, right, to services and care settings that people are in. And while I think that's a good thing, but it also has a big impact on our deficit. So we will continue to work with the community is all I can say. And I hope we reach a point where they are satisfied and we're able to close this budget gap.
Thank you.
Thank you. Gina Bixby, Bethesda Today, Mocha 360. Go ahead.
Hi, thank you, Lorna. Hi, Lieutenant Governor. I had a couple questions. As you know, in Montgomery County, we have a very large federal workforce, and a lot of people are getting laid off. A lot of people are scared. I mean, I even had people that I've been supposed to talk to for stories that even don't want to, we're supposed to be anonymous, and now they're too scared to even do that because they're worried about, retaliation. is there anything at the state level that you all are looking at to support people that could be losing their jobs in the coming months with this so-called restructuring?
I know these are very, very scary times, and our hearts go out to every one of these federal employees that are dedicated, that have committed to public service, and Governor Moore and I are going to do everything we can to protect them. Now, the biggest thing that we can do is work with our federal partners, because they probably have the biggest impact on things as far as stopping the new administration from some of the reckless proposals that they have forward. Whether, for example, they try to, stop the grants and federal funding from being delivered to many of the services that are in our state and throughout our nation. They were able to stop that. We got to work with our federal partners to make this happen. Now, unemployment, God forbid we get to that point, but if should it get there, just like during the times when our state faced COVID-19 and all the repercussions of that, the legislature got together and we were able to meet the immediate needs of the workforce. Again, we can grow the economy in the areas that we're talking about by diversifying our economy, creating more private industries to invest in the state of Maryland. We will be able to hopefully address some of the concerns that they have.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. She needs to depart. You have 10 seconds to answer another question, but we do know that you need to depart, that you must go.
Okay, I was just going to ask, I know that Dana asked some excellent questions about some of the budget constraints. I know a lot of nonprofits in the area are really concerned about losing federal funding. Just kind of to be quick, what can the state do on that level?
To lose the federal funding?
No, I mean, for nonprofits that are concerned about losing their federal funding, is there a point at which the state would step in? I know the state budget is very constrained right now.
Of course. No, thank you. And again, during these 90 days in the legislative session, this is where we are going to work with our state partners in the Maryland General Assembly to talk about what can we do to be able to address the needs of our nonprofits, because we know how much of a value they provide to our state, right? In meeting the needs of our community, in being able to create jobs as well. I think there's opportunity there. But again, we probably have tough choices ahead of us, given the $3 billion budget deficit that we're facing, as well as all the things that are happening at the national level. But again, nothing happens without partnership and collaboration from the federal, state, and local leaders, and hearing from our communities.
Thank you, Governor. Thank you again, Jeannie. Lieutenant Governor, we do know you have to depart. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. You have a wonderful day. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Mr. County Executive, you can continue with the rest of the topics.
I will. And I really want to thank Lieutenant Governor for coming on here. It was really great to see her. So back to local news, or more local news. Earlier this week, a group of council members introduced a package of legislation and proposals that they titled More Housing Now. Since then, my staff and I have received numerous questions and requests for comments about this package, particularly about the zoning text amendment, or ZTA as they call them, that would extend the county's workforce housing zoning to corridors throughout the county. We've not yet had time to fully analyze either this proposal or the others in the package. So I want to give you my first impressions, and I'll keep it fairly general. First, let me say I appreciate council members that are trying to address some concerns that came up repeatedly around the attainable housing strategies. As I've discussed previously, the attainable housing strategies proposal from the planning board understandably generated enormous concern across the county, had nothing to do with affordable housing, which they kept yammering about. And yet there was nothing in there that addressed affordable housing. And that proposal had other problems, pretty extensive, many of which I've talked about before. Second, let me clarify that all of us know that housing costs have gone up drastically. Renters are facing high rents, and many would to-be buyers are not able to find homes they can afford to purchase. The biggest challenge is for affordable housing in lower income communities and for people who make too much money to qualify for an MPDU and not enough to afford market rate housing. And since I realize I'm probably talking housing lingo, I'll say that an MPDU basically can serve people between 70 and 80% of area median income. Area median income is about $122,000. And so if you do the math, 70% of 122,000, I think, is $84,000. You get an idea of the incomes that we serve. We do not serve generally with our housing program incomes below that, and that's especially distressing since we have over 50,000 households with incomes around $50,000 or less. So you get an idea that we're already limited in what we do. This proposal doesn't address that at all. The biggest challenge in the county is affordable housing for lower income people, and that is the thing we really should be addressing. So I think any proposed solution, like this proposed solution, has to be clearly explained, and they have to address the affordability issue. At this point, there's no evidence that these proposals would help with affordability or address the lack of affordable housing for many people in the county, either for renters or homeowners. If you look at the target population, they said that this program is about people earning 120% of area median income for a family of two and 120% of area median income for a family of four. Those incomes are 148,000 for a family of two and 185,000 for a family of four, which equates to apartments priced between $3,700 a month and $4,625 a month. That is basically market rate housing in the county right now. This stuff gets built all the time. And the idea that we would subsidize what's being built all the time is just flat out ludicrous, but also the idea that this is something special that solves a problem when this is the housing that's actually being built, that's a bit of a logical problem. These are pretty much market rents. They're not affordable housing rents. For example, even a household earning $100,000 could not afford any of these units, and they make too much to get an MPDU. So they're the ones who are actually stuck between the MPDUs and market-priced housing, which is the workforce that we're supposed to be addressing, not the way they've defined the workforce in this bill. Increasing funds available for down payment assistance could expand home ownership opportunities, but that's a budget decision. It's not related to zoning. We already have a workforce housing program. I don't know why they said this is the first workforce housing program. We already have it. It's not new. We provide limited down payment assistance, and it's great for those who get it, but it's very costly. And the other thing is it's rarely used, which is one of the problems with the program, that is it has not been used because the prices are too close to market prices. At least upon first review, the proposed zoning changes seem to be geared to producing mostly market rate housing, with only a small percentage that would fall into the category of workforce, which I think I've shown you is actually pretty much market rate housing also. But it was done without any consultation with the executive branch or with our housing department or with the people who work on zoning here or with transportation experts we have. And it was done with zero community involvement. All the community knows is they were talking about the attainable housing proposal. And the next thing you know, the council is springing in a completely different program, which they're going to give a couple of public hearings to, but they've not done any of the community meetings. And I'm talking about, this is along all the major roadways in the county. If you have a three-lane, one-way roadway, so 6 lanes total, this includes those neighborhoods. So it's all of Georgia Avenue. It's University Boulevard to Veers Mill Road, up basically to Rockville. So that's a pretty wide swath of the county. And then there are a lot of other roads that are included in it. Connecticut Avenue fits this description. So you're looking at a major impact on much of the county, and there have been no community meetings anywhere to discuss this. So basically, it's a major rezoning of the county without actually talking to the people who live here. The county adopted workforce housing programs almost 20 years years ago. So before anybody embarks on a new workforce housing proposal, they ought to meet with the housing department and understand what the problems are with the existing program. And they'll see, as I said, that there are real problems getting it to actually provide affordability. That's probably why it's rarely used, and it's unclear who's benefiting. Our Department of Housing and Community Affairs has been analyzing what is working, what needs to be changed, and we're happy to have those discussions. This proposal is also confusing. It was developed and presented as a surprise, as I said, to the executive branch from the communities in the county. And the timing of the surprise announcement, before there was any public resolution to the attainable housing program, has created even more confusion about whether the new package is a first step towards implementing attainable housing, or is it a replacement for attainable housing? Residents had reasonable expectations that they would be consulted after the listening sessions. Now they're trying to understand what the impact of these newest proposals would be, and they're going to have a limited amount of time to figure that out and have a couple of public hearings. Many of them are equally concerned about this being rushed through, and they won't be able to understand what happened. So I certainly hope that any proposals will be carefully reviewed and explained with meaningful input from the communities, all of the affected areas. In fact, this countywide approach to rezoning that is in the attainable housing strategies and now in these ZTAs replaces the long-time approach of master plans that historically have engaged the affected communities. The combination of these two approaches has rendered master plans meaningless. And people who live here now, think about all the folks who go out, went out, looked for a house, looked in neighborhoods, say, I want to live there. There is no longer guaranteed to be there, not because of decisions that the people who live there make, but because some planners decided we want to change the shape of your neighborhood. It's really a troubling approach to public inclusion and to the residents of the county. And I'll point out again, the county has over 100,000 units that are zoned in master planned areas that have not been built yet. These are not one-off houses that are proposed to be replaced. These are actually packages that look at the whole of an area and look for opportunities to provide housing. I can tell you that this kind of housing is not in those plans because this kind of housing hasn't been considered before. So if the planning board or the council wanted to seriously see this implemented, they should go back to the master plans that have already been approved and not built and look for opportunities to do it there. It is a lot easier to rearrange a place when things haven't been built there than when you're going over a built environment. And so there are ways to get things that would produce more housing. This is probably the worst strategy to pick, particularly since you have alternatives that could be as productive, if not more productive, than what's being proposed here. And lastly, I'll say, for this to work, you need thousands of existing homeowners or investors in rented homes to sell those properties. This is not like buying a quarter of a block in downtown Bethesda or Silver Spring and getting a rezoning for that area. This requires you to buy all the houses on the block to have any kind of meaningful impact. So it's got issues, and I hope there's full opportunity for everybody else to play a part in this. Excuse me, my throat is dry. So there are a lot of questions that I think have to be answered. You have to ask yourself, what's the impact on infrastructure? What's the impact on transportation, parking, and schools and stormwater, emergency services, public safety, parks? These are all major issues to consider for a plan that is as massive as this plan is. So at this point, there are more questions than there are answers, and this needs to be resolved. So I look forward to continuing discussion, but we're going to continue to analyze and inform people as best we can about what this means. Moving on to another topic, and a really bad one, I think a precursor for what's going to come. Like many people in the United States and around the world, we're justifiably outraged by the elimination of the United States Agency for International Development. The decision to shutter this agency is dangerous for our national security. Also reflects a departure from our nation being a beacon of humanitarian aid and support. Chris Van Hollen called the move an illegal power grab. Congressman Jamie Raskin noted that the elimination of USAID puts lives at risk. Congressman Glenn Ivey rightly points out that only Congress has the power to make decisions like this. For decades, the agency has distributed money to our allies to fund non-governmental organizations that help provide help to people around the world. USAID employs many federal employees and contractors, including organizations and employees in Montgomery County. Many were told this week they no longer have jobs. This is another setback for our county's workforce connected to the federal government, which has been under duress over the first 3 weeks of this presidency. Our county's congressional delegation has vowed to fight against this decision, and I thank them for their efforts to protect USAID and hopefully the other federal agencies. And this is part of the critical work they do. I think Congressman Raskin said it best in response to this crisis. The election of President Trump did not create a fourth branch of government called Elon Musk. And if anybody wants to get really disturbed, go to Wired magazine. There's a 2-page spread in Wired magazine, this issue, that shows Elon Musk's wealth and holdings around the world. It's pretty impressive, and it's a reason to worry if this man is going to be calling foreign policy shots, among other things. This month is Black History Month, and marks 50 years since the very first Black History Month. And every year it allows us to look back at the contributions of Black Americans here in Montgomery County and beyond, but it's also a chance to look at the history of the Black community in Montgomery County and beyond. And it's significant to me because I do not think the country can heal itself and put itself on the right course until it deals with its own history. And we've done a pretty remarkable job of avoiding real discussions about Black history for years. The Trump administration literally wants to make it illegal for federal employees to have these discussions or to base decisions on what you discuss. It's anybody who has worked to address inequities in society and to help raise all people up is being targeted for removal from their jobs. When it was introduced under the term critical race theory, and that effort was vilified. Critical race theory is nothing more than just telling the truth about American history in the way that it actually occurred. I really regret that that thing got labeled as critical race theory because it's not just about race and it's not a theory. It's the history of what happened in the United States. That may be uncomfortable for some, but it's the reality. The end of the Civil War and the passage 100 years later of landmark civil rights legislation failed to create the necessary programs and changes to give full and equal rights to Black Americans. I mean, imagine you had been repressed for over 300 years. You had no opportunities really to build wealth. You'd been excluded from property ownership. And suddenly somebody passes a bill and says, now you're free and equal. Well, you may be technically free and equal, but your position in society is well below the position of most other people in society, most notably white people in society. At the point of your freedom, you are way behind where other communities are, particularly in terms of economic strength. So for too long, we've denied the aspiration of liberty and justice for all, and I don't think we realized it had no real meaning for many Black Americans. It's frightening to me that even today there's a drive to pretend that enacting racist policies never happened and that its impact doesn't matter. Or as the Florida governor implied, slavery might have been good for people. In Montgomery County, we use this month to highlight educational opportunities through our libraries, recreation centers, even our agriculture office. The Underground Railroad runs through our community, allowing slaves from the South to travel north to freedom. And this county was blanketed by plantations that used slaves. When that ended, our predecessors found another way to block benefits of freedom to the formerly enslaved people by placing racial covenants on much of the land in Montgomery County. Those covenants prevented Black people from owning or renting homes in the county, and they actually persisted until the end of the 1960s. So that's a long time post-freedom to not have freedom. And we still struggle with that and the consequences of it today. We announced in December that the Executive Office Building in Rockville will be renamed to honor former county executive Mike Leggett. This renaming ceremony will take place on Monday, February 24th at 3 p.m. with speeches honoring County Executive Leggett, followed by an official unveiling of the Executive Office Building's new name. We expect a packed house to honor this great man and are asking folks to RSVP to attend. Please share the email, leggettevent@montgomerycountymd.gov, with those interested in reserving a spot to this historic event. And we'll also put this email address in the chat box. Finally, turning to community health, flu cases continue to drive a rise in hospitalizations. COVID-19 cases have also increased, but they are far below historical averages for this time of year. I want to give my health team and others a chance to update you on other matters before taking your questions. So now I'll turn it over to HHS.
Thank you, Mr. County Executive. We are seeing from our surveillance data, our wastewater and our emergency departments, that our flu cases continue to rise. If people know people have been sick over the last few weeks, there's a greater chance that it's flu than other times of the year. So we still are encouraging caution. And if you are sick, please stay home. Wear a mask if you're around others. We also want to talk real briefly about another type of influenza, and that is the highly pathogenic avian influenza, or bird flu as we've been calling it. Late last week, we were in communication with the Maryland Department of Health and the Maryland Department of Agriculture, and they confirmed that there were some chickens in a backyard flock in Montgomery County who had died and been tested and come back with positives for the avian influenza. The Maryland Department of Agriculture worked with that backyard flock owner, and they have euthanized all the other chickens that they had to prevent the spread. And they're continuing to monitor other local farms that may be raising poultry in their backyards. Our disease control team, along with Maryland Department of Health, have been monitoring the owner and anybody else who may have been in contact, just to rule out any human symptoms. And so far, we have not seen any. But that does raise the question of what people should do if they see a dead bird. So far, avian influenza has been detected in more than 11,000 wild birds across the United States. It impacted a lot of poultry farms. So our partners at the Maryland Department of Agriculture do want to know, if you have a backyard flock of poultry and you have some of your poultry die or become ill, please contact the Maryland Department of Agriculture. We're sharing this number, whether it's during the daytime or after hours. They want to know immediately if your backyard flock is ill or you have some deaths. We're also going to be concerned if any of those large waterfowl or birds of prey, if you encounter them out when you're walking around and you see a dead duck or a goose or a hawk or a falcon, please don't touch it. Again, please call the Maryland Department of Agriculture because they're going to investigate and try to determine if we're seeing more avian influenza. Far more frequently, we have what we call songbirds, or those birds that just come to your yard, to your bird feeders. You often don't see them when they die. If you do, the likelihood that this was avian influenza is lower than those other birds, and the likelihood that they're going to spread it within flocks is lower. So we're not recommending that you call the Maryland Department of Agriculture for those. Please don't let your pets go near any dead birds. Even if they don't have avian flu, they may have bacteria growing on them, and it can make your pets very sick. If you need to dispose of it to protect your children or your pets, you can do that by either burying it or double bagging it and putting it in your outdoor trash. Again, please wear gloves. Please wash your hands after doing it. So we're trying to make sure that people don't pick up any other diseases from handling animals out in the environment. So the last thing I just want to mention is this is National Heart Month, February. And of course, it goes hand in hand with Valentine's Day. I suspect a lot of the listeners out there have gone through a January where they've tried to be to start a healthy start to the new year. And, we commend everyone who's done that. February is a short month. You can keep it up through February. Heart disease is the #1 killer in the U.S. and in Montgomery County. COVID made those numbers particularly worse, and they're starting to get better. But there are so many different things that can contribute to your to a healthy heart, from getting better sleep to eating healthier, being active, reducing and eliminating smoking. Make sure you know what's going on with your blood pressure and your cholesterol and your blood sugar. If you don't know what those numbers are, you should see your doctor and make sure you know whether they're in the healthy range, because there's things you can do to get them down if they are there, and they have sort of a lifetime impact to where your heart health is. And again, for the #1 thing that causes death in our community, there's a lot more we can do and be aware of to improve our health. So I know, Dr. Davis, you are more of the expert on sharing this medical advice. So do you have anything else you'd like to add?
You took the words out of my mouth, Sean. No, I think you captured it all, and it's a great reminder of. We talk a lot about the things that are less risky, and bird flu is something that is out there. But if we're going to talk about what's most concerning and what's causing the most death, it's heart attacks and heart disease. So thanks for that great reminder. I don't have anything additional.
Dr. Pritchard, do you have anything to add?
Sure, Lorna. On a different note, I know that the weather is scheduled to be in the lower 30s over the next couple of days prior to our next convening of our press conference. So reminding the media of our 24-hour homeless support and sheltering helpline. The number is 240-907-2688, 240-907-2688. Folks in the community, if they see someone who is unsheltered, please contact that number so that the Department of Health and Human Services can provide the much needed support.
Thank you, Dr. Richards. Members of the media, we are going to open it up once again for questions and answers regarding health or other topics. If you have any questions, please raise your hands. Any questions? No more questions this afternoon? Well, thank you everybody for joining us. Stay safe, have a great afternoon, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
On the Interstate 270 corridor, WPDD 1070 AM on the US 29 corridor, and on County Cable Montgomery.
Travel is slow on I-270 in the following locations.
On northbound I-270 from Clarksburg Road, Maryland.